Hi everyone, it's Nicole here for Waffle Flower with the February 2019 release card showcase. I am sharing two cards that are featuring three of the brand new stamp and die collections from Waffle Flower. Plus I'm also incorporating some previously released product for this Rainbows card today. We're going to start with the unicorn card, and we're going to build the background with the My Favorite Things mini cloud edges stencil and some cracked pistachio distress ink. Cracked pistachio is one of my favorite colors for a cloudy background. I love the mint color. I think it works really nice if you're wanting to go more the pastel route with the rest of the colors on your card, which is definitely what I want to do for the adorable unicorn from the Be Her stamp set. There are multiple critters from this stamp set. This is a Big Bear and Bird designed stamp set for Waffle Flower. There's a cat, there's the unicorn, an owl, and a little fox. Plus there's mini accessories so you can dress them up. I'm going to do the fairy wand for the unicorn for kind of this magical themed card. In addition to the Be Her stamps and dies, I'm using the rainbow panel die that I've die cut from some smooth white cardstock, and I'm going to use the outline as is, but I'm going to color the rays of the rainbow with distress inks in an ombre effect so that they're darker at the bottom and lighter at the top. We're using picked raspberry, spiced marmalade, squeezed lemonade, twisted citron, and then cracked pistachio distress inks. I'm being sure to clean up my work surface in between each sun ray so that I don't accidentally transfer a darker ink to a lighter piece of cardstock. That's especially important for the yellow. I didn't want that to be distorted at all. I picked these colors of inks because they're a little bit more along the pastel line that I'm looking for to coordinate and complement the colors of Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers I'll be using to color in the unicorn image. These are so fun because I think they're perfect for peeking out of elements or adhering along a straight line on a card, tucking behind a cloud like I'm doing on my card today. Lots of fantastic ways to use this. Maybe consider popping them up above one of the label messages from the new label messages stamp set because of the little straight line. I think that would be fun as well. I stamped the unicorn and the wand with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is my preferred ink for Zig Clean Color Real Brush Marker coloring. I've stamped everything on Bristol Smooth cardstock. If you're brand new to my channel, this is my favorite cardstock for the Zig markers. They blend like butter. If you've been here a while, you probably already know that this is my favorite cardstock to use with these markers. I wasn't terribly in love with these markers and until I started using the Bristol Smooth cardstock, and it is just so amazing, and I absolutely love it for coloring with the Zigs. I am doing some pastel rainbow coloring. The unicorn itself is just a pale gray or a light gray with the blender to blend that out. I went back in a couple areas and darkened up the gray just a little bit. I've got some pink haze for the cheeks. I've got some pinks and yellows and oranges and greens and mint and a really light purple for the unicorn horn, some purples for the wings, and then we're going to rainbow the little mane as well. Yellows for the star on the wand, and then the wand itself I'm going to do in some pinks. So really pretty minimal coloring here, really just super simple and easy. We'll take the coordinating dies for the Be Her stamps and dies and die cut these two images to work with our card. Aren't they just absolutely cute? I'm a huge fan of the Big Bear and Bird line for Waffle Flower. I'm always drawn to these illustrations and I think they're really fun to color, and the accessories are adorable. I didn't use a ton of them today, but you guys, so cute. There's a bow, there's a little collar, there's a necklace, there's hats, crowns, coffee mugs, teacups, a little purse, so all kinds of things. Now that we have our components for the card, we are ready to start kind of putting it all together. I've got my rainbow panel here, I've got my Be Her unicorn, and I'm ready to start gluing it down. So we're going to start with the rainbow panel, and I'm going to put a little liquid adhesive around the edges, around the top, and we're going to glue that in place on the background. We're going to glue down the rainbow rays, do a little inlay here. The little white outline just helps them stand out so nicely against this cracked pistachio cloud stenciled background. I'm going to take a fine tip black pen and draw in some eyelashes for my unicorn's eyes. I think that just gives it such a soft, sweet, feminine look. A black gel pen for the eyes and nostrils as well. I did die cut the rainbow word die from white cardstock adhered to Fun Foam with Stick It adhesive, and then I inked it with cracked pistachio ink. I really love the look of a dimensional word that really matches the background. I do this a lot. And I am going to tuck that along the bottom edge of my card. And I decided to go ahead and do this part first so I knew exactly where to place my unicorn and the rest of the clouds that I have. Any of the rest of the clouds you see, it's actually just 2 additional clouds. That's from the rainbow panel dies. And that is going to be, one of them will be adhered with foam adhesive, and then the other one's going to be adhered along the left side, and what I trim off the side, I'm actually going to tuck along the right side of the card. We're going to adhere our unicorn with foam adhesive so it's popped up a little bit as well. With a dimensional greeting, I felt like there needed to be a little dimension somewhere else on the card, and it just helps draw your eye into the unicorn as the focal point. Little foam adhesive along the one cloud that the unicorn's tucked behind. That helps ground it since it's not a full image and it has that bottom edge there. Some Nuvo crystal drops in White Blizzard for the wings, the star, the unicorn horn. Glue down that cloud along the left side. I have a greeting from the Rainbows stamp set, and we'll get back to that in a minute. I also applied a little Nuvo crystal drops to the rays, but I did an ombre effect of that as well, where it's more intense down near the cloud base, and then I just lightened it up and didn't even apply any at the very top. I want to add a scattering of sparkly jewels to this card. These are all from Pretty Pink Posh. I've got the jewels in pink blush, buttercream, spring green, and aquamarine. In addition to the jewels here, I'm also going to use Honeybee Stamps acrylic hearts in strawberry ice and crystal clear. So only one of the strawberry ice ones, we're going to tuck that on the little cloud there in the front, and then I'll use some crystal clear throughout, as well as to use to dot the I in the word rainbow. The little die cut for this is so super teeny tiny. I thought about adhering it. I even tried to, and I ended up just not liking it at all. So I went ahead and used a little crystal clear heart for the dot on the I. I tend to like to lay out my jewels before I start gluing. I wanted it to be an assortment of colors, so I'm laying them out, playing with placement, seeing what all I want to use, and then I will take some liquid adhesive. I think I used the glue tube here today, and the crystal katana to pick them up and put them in place where I want them to go. They're going to be scattered from the upper right corner of the card to the bottom left. And it's just a random sprinkling. I picked colors that complemented the rainbow rays and the rainbow in the unicorn. Now, once I have all of my jewels where I want them to go on the card, I want to go ahead and take some glossy accents, and I'm going to trace over the word rainbows. I have a fine tip applicator. It's the Scrap Perfect applicator on my glossy accents, and this is going to just put a thin line of glossy accents on this word, which is going to give it a glossy finish, which helps it stand out even more. It's tone on tone, but that glossy finish on this is really nice. I'm going to trim off that cloud, and I did just tuck that other little edge over on the right. I thought it balanced out the design really nicely. We'll place this on a white top fold card base. And the final thing is I need to finish my sentiment. I had kicked around the whole time I was putting my card together what I wanted to stamp the rest of my sentiment on. I knew I wanted to use always look for, so it reads always look for rainbows, and I just couldn't quite figure out what sentiment or what cardstock I wanted to stamp that on. And I ended up going with a smoke gray cardstock from Simon Says Stamp that we're going to stamp the phrase on with a clear embossing ink. We will sprinkle on white embossing powder then to heat set that and trim it into a thin strip before we pop this up with foam adhesive. Because this is going to layer over a dimensional die cut word, it needs to be raised up as well. And it's going to also straddle the loop in the letter B on the word rainbows. In order for that to lay flat, I'm not going to put a continuous strip of foam adhesive underneath this, but rather I'm going to kind of piece my foam adhesive and leave a spot underneath the strip that doesn't have any, so that it lays nice and flat. I hope that'll make sense. Let's trim off the ends of the greeting here, and I'll show you what I mean. I love these foam adhesive strips. So I'm just going to kind of lay it over the word to see where I need to leave some space. So it looks like kind of from that second A in the word always, or the Y in the word always, to a little bit after the L in look. And I'll put a little space in between my foam adhesive there, peel off the two sections, and then pop that right in place over the top. And that lays perfectly flat. So a fun rainbow themed card featuring the new Big Bear and Bird Be Her Stamps and Dies from the February 2019 release, and I've paired that with previously released product from Waffle Flower, the Rainbow Panel, the Rainbow Word Dies, and also the Rainbows Stamp Set. One of my favorite things is to mix and match. Not everything has to come from maybe a single release or a single set. See what you already have in your stash and what you can make work. For my second card today, I'm going to be creating a really similar background. We're going to do a couple different things to this. It's not going to go side to side on the Fairies card. It's going to be a little bit smaller scene, some smaller images, but very similar, same colors. We're just going to switch it up and use the little Fairies stamps and dies and also the Label Messages stamp set. So another wonderful stamp set from the February release. This stamp set is by another designer that I totally love, that Waffle Flower does a lot with, and it has a very distinct look. It always has these little images, or these little people images that are just so cute. There's been many of them, and I think they're really fun. I think if you have several, you could probably even mix and match different ones from different sets. I'm going to create a little fairy garden here, all grounded on the word beautiful, to create this birthday themed card. I am stamping not only the little fairies images, the flowers and the leaves and the cherry butterflies and fairies, but also that Label Messages greeting that says beautiful, so it's birthday wishes beautiful is kind of my sentiment. That word beautiful is going to be what I use to ground everything. We're going to color it to match our cloud background, which I did off camera because I simply stenciled a smaller cloud background, and instead of taking the clouds from the top of the panel to the bottom, I stopped about 3/4 of the way down. And then we're going to color in our images with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. And as I am coloring through these images, I did put the names of the colors I'm using and the color number in the top right corner of the screen. So if you're wondering at all anytime as I'm working through these images what colors I'm using exactly, you can find that information there. They are also linked individually on my blog post, and you can get that link from the description below the video here on YouTube. Couple different green color combinations for any greenery on this. I switched back and forth a lot in my coloring here today. No real rhyme or reason. Often I try to do like all my greens, all the skin tones, and I started that way a little bit, and then I just jumped around a lot. So I apologize, it's going to be a lot of back and forth. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to color everything, and so I moved around a lot. I like to lay down the dark color, blend out with the lighter color. The wings I purposely did kind of iridescent-y with the purples, same as I did for the unicorn on the rainbows card, so that I could go over these with Nuvo crystal drops in White Blizzard when I'm done coloring and I've adhered those to the card. I love when they have that shimmery effect. And then a lot of the same colors, the pinks, the yellow oranges, the purples that I used on the other card. We're going to pull in a little bit more blue just for variety. We're also going to pull in more of a little bit darker purple, which one of my favorite color combinations is blue and English lavender. So we'll be doing that as well for this card. And then the cherry will have a little touch of red, and we'll use little touches of red for some accents on one of the fairies as well. The word beautiful, that label box, I'm going to color in with turquoise green and green shadow. This color combination matches the cracked pistachio distress ink really well. I'm using that to ground my images to keep everything on there really nice, and then I'm just coloring in my flowers. I even went back in and added a little bit more texture on some of them. I like when the flower petals have a little more texture. If you ever want to lighten something, you can always use the blender to do that instead of a lighter color of ink. Make sure you clean the tips of your lighter markers off constantly so that you don't drag too much of a darker color into a lighter area. And even one of the fairies' dresses is going to be in that mint color. Lots of teeny tiny little images here. I think that a successful scene with lots of these little images is to kind of group them tightly together. It's one of the reasons I made my background a little bit smaller. It's 4 inches by 5 1/4, so it's going to have a 1/8 inch border all the way around. And then I'm tightening up my scene by grounding it with that label message and grouping it all together except for the one fairy that's kind of flying up high. And then we'll even add in some jewels and things to group it together more and make it a little bit more cohesive and add some sparkle or additional sparkle. We'll die cut all these images with the coordinating little fairies dies. If you didn't hear the news last month, Waffle Flower is now selling their dies detabbed. That means they come and you don't have to cut them apart. You guys, game changer for me. This was so fantastic. I can't even tell you how much I love this. No more cutting my fingers on little tabs that I didn't get cut off really nice. And it's instant. Instead of, a lot of times I'll stamp, I'll color, and then I have to cut all my dies apart to die cut the images, and it's such a bummer. you just go right to your dies and die cut. There is no cutting them apart, which I think is awesome. Now, another little tip about creating my little flower garden scene or fairy garden scene. Some of my images are adhered directly to the cloud background, and some are popped up with foam adhesive. I did this on purpose to give that illusion of depth and dimension and to add instant interest to my card. The word beautiful was also popped up, and that helps a lot. It's almost like a little flower box, if you will, and you're tucking everything inside. It's a perfect way to ground these images. You could also use a grassy border or a grass stamp along the bottom edge. I think that would be cute as well. I'm going to seat the one fairy on the center of the flower. So part of her will need some foam adhesive squares and part of her will need to be glued directly to the flower because it's already popped up with foam adhesive. We'll tuck these last few things in here. Now, I did forget to stamp my greeting up top before I started adhering everything. It didn't really interfere at all, the foam adhesive on these images, because it's just not that high. So it really didn't interfere with creating my fairy garden. But normally I would probably stamp that first. I wanted the birthday wishes sentiment from the Little Fairies stamp set to coordinate with the rest of my scene, and so instead of stamping that in black, which I think would take away from this, I am going to stamp this with the cracked pistachio ink. I used the Misty to stamp it so that I could stamp it multiple times to get a nice, smooth, bold stamped greeting that coordinates and complements the scene rather than takes away from it. Much like we inked the die cut word rainbows from the last card, I want this sentiment to coordinate with the scene too. So look how cute that is against that lightly cloud inked background. So, so sweet. I did use the regular distress ink to stamp this, and you can see I needed to stamp it several times to get a nice bold greeting. I think I did maybe 4 times. And then we'll go ahead and add the remaining images, and we will embellish with Pretty Pink Posh jewels just like we did on the last card. We're going to do finishing touches with Nuvo crystal drops so that the fairy wings are glittery, as I mentioned. Some of the flower petals I want to be glittery. We can put some glossy accents on the cherry. I wanted the cherry to be glittery. Or not glittery, glossy. The center of the little teeny tiny flower there right before the bee in beautiful has glossy accents. The little dots on the purple flowers. Little things like that. All of those little touches go into adding the perfect finishing touches to a card like this. I did take a black glaze pen and add detail to the eyes. That is something I do for critters, for people images. I think faces are so important, and so I always like to go back in and make sure that the eyes are really showing up well. It helps just draw your eye into that. I even added a little White Blizzard Nuvo crystal drops to the edges of the purple flowers, not all of the way, because that just adds a little glittery edge. Here's that glossy accents for the cherry, the center of the flower, and then a couple of those other places as I mentioned a second ago. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this card showcase featuring new stamps and dies from the Waffle Flower February 2019 release. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Here are a couple more videos featuring Waffle Flower stamps and dies that you might be interested in. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.